Hi, everybody. I'm Marjorie Krause, and I'm the founder and executive chair of APCO Worldwide, and I've been given the privilege of moderating this session, and I hope we're going to learn a lot together. We're here today to talk about Saudi Arabia, which has long been an enigma around the world, but has quickly emerged as an economic powerhouse, hitting a total GDP surpassing $1 trillion for the first time. And with all the disruption around the world, Saudi sits between the East and West, caught between competing versions of the world, and while it aspires to be one of the top 15 economies in the world. So we're lucky to have some real experts today to address these questions. My questions first, and then I hope there'll be a lot from the audience. But we have 5 ministers from Saudi to talk to us, and I'd like to introduce them to you and then get into the questions. So I'm going to introduce them just by title, because you all had a chance to read about their backgrounds. And so all the way at the end is the Minister of Economy and Planning, Faisal Al Ibrahim. Next to him is the Minister for Communications and for Information Technology, Abdullah Al Swaha. Next to him is Her Highness, Princess Haifa Al Saud, who is the Assistant Minister of Tourism. And then next to, I'm just looking to see who's next here, we have Mohammed Al Jadaan, who's the Minister of Finance. And next to me is the Minister of Investment, Khalid Al Faleh. So welcome all of you, and let's get right into it. So I'd like to start, Faisal, with you, if we can. And while we're going to be talking mostly about the economy and what's happening, we can't talk about Saudi Arabia without first talking about oil. And I just wondered if you could comment with the Vision 2030 and the economic plan that I've seen, contemplates diversification of the economy through moving away from fossil fuels. Now that the cost of fossil fuels is so high, are you going to double down while you can, or are you going to continue along the path of diversification?
Good morning, Marjorie, and good morning, everyone. I think this week has been a very energizing and inspiring week, and it's culminating in this final panel with 4 of my inspiring colleagues. To your question, I'd say our policies are clear. Energy demand from oil will continue to increase, and that's a consensus of experts around the world. We will continue to increase capacity, 13.4 million barrels a day, maximum sustainable capacity, and we will continue to advocate increased capacity. We will also continue to advocate climate change and reducing emissions. These 2 points do not contradict each other. We believe that the last thing we want is focusing on climate change without focusing on energy security and energy development, economic development. I'd say the last thing we want to see is having to go back to burn the dirtiest kind of coal in a time of need. Lastly, and we have examples of that, the Saudi Green Initiative, the Middle East Green Initiative, our ambitions and moving towards 50% of our energy utility demand coming from renewables by 2030. These are all moving according to plan, and we can share more details about them. Lastly, I'd say we will continue steadfastly and absolutely our drive to diversify our economy. This increase in oil revenue or oil activities will only help us get there faster and more effectively. The Saudi economy is projected to grow 7.4% this year. Last year, our non-oil activities grew at 6.1%, and we want that trend to continue. The first quarter of this year saw a growth of 9.6% compared to the last quarter, same quarter last year, and that's the largest since 2011. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. And Khalid, I'd come to you because we're hearing about all this growth. Where is Saudi on its growth journey? Is this a trend that's going to continue? Is it sustainable? And I know foreign direct investment increased in the first quarter. Are people at the front end of that wagon, or what's a good time to come?
Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be back at Davos in person. I just want to echo what Faisal said. The kingdom is on plan, in fact, ahead of plan on many metrics. Not only our GDP growth, we're crossing the 1 trillion threshold on our way to 1.6 to 1.8, which we project will position us as the 15th largest economy. We, in terms of investment, did issue a detailed national investment strategy that brings all of the investors, all of the players, that unveils all of the sectors, that provides all of the enablers from funding, financing, the regulatory environment, all of the input factors, leading us to a diversified economy by unlocking some of the new, exciting sectors that have so much potential and so much competitiveness in the kingdom. We wanted to increase our total capital formation in absolute terms, but also as a percentage of our rapidly increasing GDP. We were at 20% of GDP, going to 30% of our much larger GDP. Happy to report that in 21, we reached 23% of a larger GDP. In terms of absolute terms, our target in this trajectory was to reach $175 billion of total investment. We almost hit $20 billion investment. So a significant overshoot. FDI, which is a key catalyst for total investment and a vehicle for bringing technology, know-how, global partners. Many of them are with us in the room. We were at less than 1% of GDP. We're going to 5.7. We reached 2.3% of GDP. In 21, our total FDI reached $20 billion, 4x of what it was when the vision was launched. So everything is projecting. And I think more importantly than everything I've said about the quantum and the numbers is the qualitative components. Almost all of the investments, not all, but many of the investments I talked about are in new sectors. It's in tech. His Excellency Swaha can talk about it. It's in tourism. Her Highness will talk about it. It's in e-mobility. We just broke ground on the world's most exciting electric vehicle assembly plant, 150,000 vehicles that will be assembled in Saudi Arabia in 2 years. And this is one of likely 3 mega assembly plants. All of the giga projects, what the PIF is doing in unlocking and catalyzing sectors that are open for foreign direct investment.
And I hope we'll get into that with the audience. And you should be preparing your questions too. You'll never have a panel of such expertise available to you. So please be ready to do that. But I do want to turn to Mohammed. You know, in terms of the Minister of Finance, what role does fiscal policy play in attracting these investments, and how do you contribute to that?
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank WIF for making this possible in person again. I think investors want 3 things. They want credibility, and we have that through various institutional reforms that we have done. They want predictability, and we are actually maturing significantly compared to where we started, and now we talk to the investors, we communicate with investors, we take them and their feedback seriously, and then transparency, which is very dear to my heart, and I think public data will need to be available to the public, and we have gone actually a long way in that. There is a lot to talk about in terms of fiscal discipline and the fiscal sustainability program, and I'm more than happy to answer questions if there are. I just wanted to save the time.
I think that we all admire, too, the way that you were able to balance fiscal policy while dealing with the epidemic. I think many countries around the world really struggled, and maybe if we have time, we can get into what you could teach us.
I think that very quickly, I would say, while the world faced COVID, and we all suffered from it, in Saudi Arabia and few other countries, but in Saudi Arabia particularly, we faced a dual shock, the COVID and then the plunge in oil prices. And while the whole idea of Vision 2030 came about to really deal with diversification of the economy, the reforms at large in various sectors, we managed to actually maintain our discipline and had to take very tough decisions, but then communicated that with our public, with the private sector. And I think the end result is we have a lot more trust from the public, a lot more trust from the private sector. We provided the right support, but we did not lose discipline, and our, kept really very tight discipline on our fiscal position, which is helping the world now, not only Saudi Arabia, but also the world.
So, Princess Haifa, can we turn to you? Tourism is such a vibrant part of the growing Saudi economy. And it seems like in Saudi Arabia, it was the opposite. COVID had the opposite impact than the rest of the world. While the tourism industry was really struggling, you seemed to soar ahead. How did you do it, and what can we learn from it?
Thank you, Marjorie, and good morning to everyone. Just to set a bit more context to what you just mentioned, in 2019, when we launched our national tourism strategy, we had started with a baseline of 41 million visits from 2018, because we can't forget that we always had religious visits as part of one of our key visits. We saw that jump. We closed in 2021 at 63 million visits. Mostly, we didn't just recover, but we've actually increased, mostly driven by domestic tourism. And yesterday, the World Economic Forum released their new Travel and Tourism Development Index, ranking Saudi as the second largest improvement on that index. We jumped now to level 33 out of over 100 countries. So,
Congratulations.
Thank you. The key areas where we did exceptionally well, to His Excellency Khalid Al-Falih's point, is in the environment of business. We managed to amend the regulations and policies. We're now amongst the top 10 countries in the environment of business in travel and tourism. An example of this is it used to take 2 weeks to get licensed for any of your tourism-related activities, accommodations, destination management companies, as it still is in most of the world. It now takes 120 seconds online to get licensed in Saudi Arabia. Another example of this is the e-visa. The e-visa we launched, it took us 5 months. The system, you can go online now, and it takes you less than 5 minutes to get a visa to Saudi Arabia, as well as visa on arrival. The second area in which we are amongst the top 10 is the prioritization of the travel and tourism industry from the government perspective. And this is why we managed to do so well during the pandemic and recover. It received a center stage at a government level. We all worked together. All of the ministers sitting on this panel were very supportive of the efforts being done in the recovery in the pandemic, how we quickly gave support to accommodations, how we protected the jobs in that sector. And we focused on training as well. We managed to train 110,000 people last year alone, which is all contributing to the way we are moving forward. We continue to be agile, which is absolutely critical, and adaptable in the methodology that we deliver. And I think these are the key areas of success and why we were able to overcome.
Thank you, very impressive. Abdullah, I'm coming to you last, so maybe I'll ask you 2 questions before we start back the other way. As the minister who's in charge of technological advancement, basically, in the country, how do you assure that what you're doing is going to be not create further inequities? A lot of countries that are moving fast on technology worry about a digital divide. And how are you overcoming that and contributing to the growth?
Thank you, Marjorie. And before I zoom in on your question, let's take a little bit of a step back and appreciate the narrative last year. WEF was talking about the Great Reset. This year, we're talking about a path to the Great Recovery, and between the dual shocks that His Excellency Mohammed Al-Jad'an was sharing. But there's a more optimistic story that we want to share today. Saudi Arabia, the great reform story of the 21st century. Because this has been the thesis for Vision 2030, how we can leverage talent and technology to improve inclusion, sustainability, and growth. And on inclusion, to make sure that we close down the digital divide and make sure that there is equity in everything that we do, we're very proud that we have jumped from 7% women empowerment in tech to more than 29%. And remember that 29% is actually higher than the EU average, G20 average, and even the US average. And I just came back from the Silicon Valley, where they sit just at 27%. And this is why we have amazing stories of Dr. Muna, who's leveraging the 4K camera and the GPU capability that ships with every smartphone to scan the retina to prevent type 2 diabetes, one of the lead causes of blindness in the world. Moving to sustainability. And don't take my word for it. I do invite you to see Aramco's and SABIC's showcase here today at the World Economic Forum, where they have shown and demonstrated that they have the lowest carbon intensity in partnership with Stanford and MIT in sharing that data when it comes to production, transportation, and refinery. Last but not least is growth. We not only have, as His Excellency Khaled mentioned, became the trillion-dollar economy and the largest tech and digital market, but during the toughest year that humanity have seen in the past 90 years, Saudi was named by the World Economic Forum as the #1 digital riser.
And how are you going to convert that into leapfrogging, or will it help Saudi kind of leapfrog in terms of everything else we're talking about?
No, absolutely. My mandate is to become top 10 in everything that we do. And we just touched base on the talent and the technology. So on talent, by the World Economic Forum, we're #9. When it comes to tech and digital, if we look at the growth sectors, venture capitalism growth last year by triple digits, 270% year-over-year growth. And what we have seen in 2021 was more than 2020 and 19 combined, where we have seen tremendous growth, and thanks to His Excellency Jad'an, in fintech, 200% year-over-year growth. Commerce grown tremendously with the Ministry of Commerce. We've seen software, enterprise software, data and AI, and those are the specific use cases. So definitely we're tripling down on tech and digital, powered by talent and technology.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add to what His Excellency just said and your question, Marjorie. In the sectors we're trying to build and unlock in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I'm discovering after 40 years in old brick and mortar industries that investors actually are looking at different infrastructure and different enablers. They want broadband, they want cloud computing, they want talented workforce, whether they're in finance, biotech, tourism, having the biggest and best ports in the region, the biggest industrial infrastructure, roads and railway is necessary, and we're doing it, but digital infrastructure is as important, if not more important, to the new economy. So what he's doing is making my job possible in building these and unlocking these sectors and bringing the investors to the kingdom.
Well, we're talking about human talent. I can't help but come back to Princess Haifa, because there is a lot of misperception about women in Saudi Arabia. And if there's been one area that I've witnessed a lot of change, it's been on that. And as I understand, the 2030 plan contemplated 30% of employment for women, and that Saudi's already at 33%.
36.
36. It grows every day. But maybe you could comment a little bit on that.
Absolutely. So as you've rightly mentioned, we've already exceeded our 2030 numbers in women in the workforce. Looking at SMEs, which is critical to the tourism industry, where it represents 80%, 42% of SMEs in Saudi Arabia today are women-owned. We can see that we have equal pay for men and women and equal opportunities, and we actually have more women graduating from colleges and universities than we do men. We see women today in every single job type. We see women in sports. They were just competing. We had the Saudi women teams just competing in Kuwait for the Gulf Games a few days ago. So I think women exist today in every single aspect. The numbers speak for themselves. I mean, I'm here, so.
And I'm moderating. So I'd like to turn to the audience. If there's some questions, I'd like to be able to accommodate those. So I think, yes, sir.
Thank you very
Can you please identify
Sure.
yourself too?
Thank you very much, Marjorie. Faisal Abbas from Arab News. I would like to ask Her Highness and their Excellencies to comment about a topic that has been constantly recurring here in Davos between journalists and in the corridors and maybe in one of the sessions, which is about regional competition. It seems everybody is a bit anxious or obsessed with the story that Saudi rising would necessarily mean other countries not doing so well. Is the progress that's happening in Saudi Arabia actually an accelerator for regional growth, or does it have to be at the expense of other countries in the region?
So does one go up, going up, does it bring one down? So we have a lot of comments. So let's keep the comments short and get as many in as we can.
I'll go, if I may.
Please.
It's very quickly. I would say, actually, it is increasing the buy. And we are seeing it actually on motion. When a country like Saudi Arabia moves, others actually up their game. And we are seeing that actually in action today. So it is actually in the interest of the whole region, and not only Saudi Arabia. Sorry about this.
I would just say, first of all, rising tide lifts all boats. And regional integration is more important to our smaller but very important economies next to us than it is to Saudi Arabia. So I believe that the kingdom rise in its economic and competitive performance actually helps their competitiveness. It allows companies and enterprises and the governments of those countries to integrate with a larger global economy in Saudi Arabia.
From a tourism perspective, we were asked this question a lot, and competition is critical because we create competition within Saudi Arabia for different destinations, because what it does is actually it increases quality, and it's very healthy because they start complementing each other. And the region in its entirety is a hub. So once you come, it becomes more, once you arrive to the region, it becomes more appealing to visit different destinations. So it's absolutely to our benefit.
And if I may add very quickly, I think competition and competitiveness is essential for us to push the bar upwards, but coordination is also necessary. And there's a lot of coordination and collaboration that happens behind the scenes. There's a lot of camaraderie between policymakers within the region that gives us these assurances.
There's a question in the back.
Thank you so much. With the very ambitious and aggressive reforms and growth that you have, you will need population growth, and you have expressed that. So what are the strategies, initiatives, and partnerships that you want to attract not only at the job level, but culturally, so that other groups can come to the country and stay to help you grow, but also to bring new perspectives to the country to learn more about the world? I work with the U.S. Hispanic population, 62 million people, the youngest of America, and they are the most favorable in their visibility to the country. So I'm very curious about your perspectives.
Faisal, do you want to start?
Yes, maybe I'll start with one of our programs in the division, the Quality of Life program. It's one of the programs that saw achieving the results much sooner than the deadline or the timeline that was put forward to it. I believe the growth that in Saudi Arabia will have to see the participation of people from around the world that will make Saudi Arabia their home. Saudi Arabia is becoming more attractive for people from around the world. And we're keen to make talent and access to talent easy in this upward journey of our economic and social growth.
Yeah,
Sure, please.
I just want to say that don't forget that since the creation of Saudi Arabia, our economic development, our social development, our development of key sectors have been underpinned by integration of expatriate guests into the kingdom. Today, 30% of our population are expats. Some of them are working, some of them are families, and they have been a key part of the story of Saudi Arabia. That will increase going forward in terms of number of expats coming to the kingdom, and also in terms of the quality as our economy gets more sophisticated and more diversified. And as Faisal said, we're putting the infrastructure in terms of quality of life to support that.
So there was a question I promised back here. I guess that's the next one.
Thank you. Val Mifsakov, founder and CEO of Zero Avia. We're a hydrogen electric aircraft company. My question is about the role that you see for Saudi Arabia in the overall world's energy transition. There is enormous solar resource in the country, and already a leadership position on the energy market overall. How do you plan to leverage those resources and become the leading energy company or energy country in the new world?
We have a couple of people who are
Yeah,
capable
I
of
think,
answering
I think
that.
we have the
One of the experts.
Well, first of all, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been advocating a pragmatic but aggressive, pushing the limit on the energy transition a long time ago, more than 10 years ago, that we've started advocating and all within the COP and within the community. And we have invested heavily in renewables. The Kingdom today, as a Minister of Investment, I can tell you firsthand that as we travel the world, we're pushing more and we're actually achieving more Saudi investments internationally in renewables energy than we're doing in conventional energy. Our targets speak for themselves in terms of net zero by 2060. Our companies have already committed to net zero by 2050. We are the largest investor today in green hydrogen, not only in Saudi Arabia, where we definitely are, but yesterday there was Saudi companies and international companies signing massive green hydrogen investments in neighboring countries. So we're taking our success globally, and we're going to bring hydrogen-fueled buses and trucks. I mentioned electric vehicles. 30% of our cars will soon be EV. So we're leading, not following on the transition, but we're doing it also in a way that is sustainable, not only environmentally, but from an affordability and economic sustainability of the developing world in particular.
Faisal, how does this fit into the overall planning?
So just a little more examples. Maybe we're focusing on an inclusive approach to climate change and leadership there. So not only we believe that all sources of energy should see technological advancements that reduce emissions, and we're focusing on reduction of emissions, not just tackling the sources. We have the lowest cost in solar and wind with 1.99 cents and 1.04 cents, and this has been achieved a year ago or more. We also have the largest green hydrogen facility in development. We also are looking at establishing the largest carbon capture, utilization, and storage hub with 44 million tons a year. And there are more examples of Saudi Arabia putting its money where its mouth is when it comes to this pragmatic energy transition.
Before we get to the next question, and I promised it to you, I just think that, just listening to you and being at the World Economic Forum, it's interesting to note that we have 5 ministers up here who 10 years ago were all in business. I mean, they weren't, that's, I think, unusual in countries to have so many people involved in government and planning these things that actually have a business background. And you can make your own judgments about whether that speeds things up and makes things easier, but I have found that very interesting. Sir, please identify yourself.
John Chipman from the International Institute for Strategic Studies, headquartered in London, but with an office also in the region. Just one validation and one question. The validation is that we were invited in March this year to organize a major international conference in Riyadh, several hundred participants, 25 different countries represented, and I can confirm that getting the multiple entry visas and the electronic applications was extremely easy, something that I don't think we would have been able to do so easily as recently as 5 years ago. And the conference room was packed, and it was a really very successful event, made easier by the confidence people had of the ease in which they could come in to Saudi Arabia. The theme of the conference was how Saudi Arabia could build its own defense industrial base, and we were invited to provide for the GAMI a lot of defense economics analysis in order to assist policymaking. One of our conclusions was that there is an insufficient amount of money spent within defense and other budgets on research and development. And so I would like to ask maybe the 2 ministers that are interested in emerging technology and research and development to see how the national budget might be adjusted in order to support more research and development so that you can grow at greater speed.
So let me take that one. So if you look at the framework of the Global Innovation Index and how Saudi is faring, you would find that in terms of inputs and outputs, Saudi is doing quite well. So in terms of patents, publications, paperwork. But where we fall short is the intersection between academia, innovation, and the industry. And this is why Today, we're laser focused on achieving productivity through purpose and priority. And soon, within a couple of months, we'll be announcing our national innovation priorities. But ultimately, it's a continuation of the story that we have started at the G20, where Saudi Arabia made a promise for the world to realize the opportunities of the 21st century by empowering people, safeguarding the planet, and shaping new frontiers. Now, on defense in particular, we're laser focused on that as a big top 5 defense spender in the world, and also to be synergetic with the other sectors. So there are parallels on safeguarding the planet, on empowering people, and shaping new frontiers in my sectors, so tech and digital and space. I can also share with you confidentially among friends that we're also gonna be pegging our GDP towards a very healthy level of spend. And I can tell you it's gonna be at par with a lot of G20 nations.
There was a question over here, and then we'll get back, and then over here. I'm just looking on this side, too. I want to be fair to everybody.
Hi, this is Tariq Ali Ahmed from Arab News. Recently, reports in media, not in Arab News, suggested that NEOM will operate under its own laws and possibly consider alcohol. I wanted to ask is there any consideration? Is this true? Is this not? And in any way, will this possibly be considered in restaurants, for example?
Happy to take that question.
Okay. Or unhappily taking the question.
No, Saudi has been very transparent about where it stands and everything. His Excellency said transparency comes first. We were very clear. I think we all even heard it from our head of state, where we stand on serving alcohol. So the short answer is we are going to continue with our current laws. We have been doing very well, and we have been competing, as I mentioned the numbers earlier. We've actually been outperforming globally when it comes to tourism with what we currently have to offer today. There's a lot to go around without introducing anything new.
Okay, and there was a question in the back, just behind you.
Good morning. I'm from Reuters News, Dmitry Zhdanikov. I'm the editor for Energy. With record oil revenues, my question is to all ministers who would like to take the question. So with record oil revenues that the kingdom is facing, you will certainly have a queue of people who will want to see you and ask for investment and potential partnerships. Mr. Fali, you've mentioned green hydrogen. What are the areas the kingdom is prioritizing when talking about investments abroad? And the second part of my question is, I don't think I will reveal a big secret if I say that relations between the kingdom and the Biden administration have been much more difficult than when the previous Trump administration. To what extent has it been impacting your decision-making in terms of, like, where do you place your investments abroad and in terms of attracting FDI? Thank you.
So let's start with the first question about priorities for investment. Who would like to start, please?
May I? Okay. Two things, Dimitri, and thank you for the question. I thought you had enough time with us in the last few days to ask your questions, but this is actually important. One is we obviously are looking for investments, and we are looking also for investors at the same time. This panel is within the government, and the government actually does not do any investment itself. So the investments are, they go through the PIF, which is an independent institution that it's at its own board. The government decides what it does with the surpluses when there are surpluses. And I've said this over the last few days, few times. The surplus will go to replenish our buffers to make sure that we are prepared to deal with external shocks. But then the remaining will go to either the National Development Fund, which supports private sector investments, or the Public Investment Fund, which is the asset manager of the government money, where it invests both to develop the local economy, but also externally. They have not been shy in investing in the US. Just to answer your second question, we are continuing to invest in the US, but elsewhere. And the relationship has been very good all over, despite whatever you hear in the media.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that?
I would just say that, as a Minister of Investment, I've been to the U.S. a number of times since I took my position the last 2 years. Relationships with the U.S. broadly are very strong, and you may hear a lot in the news, but that doesn't shake the underlying foundation of connectivity. The U.S. is the biggest investor in Saudi Arabia in terms of the companies, and they continue to come very strong. Financial investors, private equity, as well as corporations and multinationals of all sectors. So, but that doesn't also reduce our intent to draw in investments from other regions and other countries. We're diversified in all aspects, and we continue to work with investors from all over the world. But the U.S. will remain central.
So let
One
me
last
share with
comment.
you 2 stories. So a couple of years ago, we've worked with Microsoft and MISC, Prince Mohammed bin Salman NGO on philanthropy, on galvanizing and creating a movement to inspire 1 million women and youth on tech and technology. And we did it with Microsoft, and that was a multi-million-dollar engagement. The second, more recent announcement that we have done with Google was announcing the largest cloud investment in the region, north of $1 billion. So those are testimonies that from a tech and digital perspective, and on the thesis of empowering women, youth, and actually accelerating into a future economy, the relationship and investments with the U.S. could not be any better.
Okay.
And if
Sorry,
on the
please,
lighter side,
Faisal.
and a little anecdotally, I think the level of engagement this past year and maybe in 21 with U.S. enterprises and U.S. institutions has been at its highest level. I mean, I believe all my colleagues share that with the rest of the world, but I think the U.S. had the lion's share of our engagements.
I've promised a couple questions over here first, and then if there's time, we'll get back. Please, you were next, and then this woman over here.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. I'm Yusuf Ali, Chairman Lulu Group, which we are running retail. Investor perspective, an investor needs visionary leadership, strong economy, ease of doing business. I congratulate all the ministers. We have got Majesty and His Royal Highness leadership taking forward Saudi Arabia, a great country, and strong economy, as Finance Minister mentioned, and also ease of doing business, which Her Excellency mentioned. We've got about 3,500 Saudi employees, out of which 1,100 women, ladies working for us, and they are punctual, hardworking. We are going to take 10,000 Saudi nationals within 3 years, out of which we are going to take 5,000 women employees. This is just, so thank you very much for their support. The question which 2 days people were discussing about the infrastructure, how we will improve the infrastructure in different parts. So only just I want to know that what all initiatives honorable ministers are taking to improve the infrastructure facilities in Saudi Arabia for the curiosity of other investors. Thank you.
Faisal, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. I think we have an assessment of the level of infrastructure that is available and its quality and what's needed for us to achieve our 2030 goals. We also have institutions that have been established that are looking at let's say, the best practices of how to manage CapEx capital expenditures, and how to maintain them. I think the idea or the notion of infrastructure, I'm talking at the, let's say, not the soft infrastructure, is something that is essential for us to achieve our vision. It's something that we're looking at. The type of companies we'd like to invite and engage are companies that will prioritize institution building, best practices delivery, and on-time delivery of our ambitions for 2030. That's probably a quick answer.
Okay, you had a question over here.
Thank you. Najla Habriri from Sharq al-Awsat. My question is addressed to Her Highness Princess Haifa, if I may. Saudi is aiming to target 100 million tourists annually by 2030. How are Saudi cities getting ready and preparing to welcome such flows of tourists in terms of infrastructure and services? And what role does the private sector, especially local Saudi private sector, has to play in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So the 100 million visits, just to clarify, is both domestic and international, so it's a combination of both. We are working continuously. It's a transformation that we're undergoing. We just opened up the e-visa in 2019. We're continuously seeing reforms, not just from a regulatory and policy perspective, but also from an infrastructure perspective. We have public transportation that's coming on. We have new hotels that are opening up. And private sector is absolutely critical. We've been working with our partners and stakeholders from the very beginning. Marriott announced that it's increasing its investment in Saudi Arabia, as well as IHG. IHG has actually announced that they're increasing their investment by 600% over the next 5 years. So these will all, obviously, these are room keys that are coming into the market. We continue to work on our focused destinations that are going to be a priority and uplifting the infrastructure needed to serve the traveler journey. That being said, all of these room keys that are opening will need jobs and proper jobs. So we are working on training programs. We had 15 training programs last year. We have 33 training programs this year. We've partnered up with the top hospitality schools in the world, whether it be in Europe or the US or in Asia, and we are training more and more people. As I mentioned, we trained 110,000. And just the first quarter of this year, we trained over 35,000 people. So we're continuously to ramp up. We're continuously ramping up as we go.
I know we have only a couple minutes left, and I know you have a question, but I do too. So go ahead, make yours quick, and then we'll wrap up.
Hi, Your Highness and Your Excellencies, thank you for all the feedback. This is Mohammed Tamalia, a global shaper from the Jeddah Hub, part of the youth delegation in the Global Economic Forum. As part of individual being in Saudi, I want to thank you for all things being done. We do feel it as the youth in Saudi. I have two small questions, please. One is on the Saudi Made initiative. We all saw it, and we see it with the SMEs and how it's supporting the SMEs and exporting and so forth from Saudi. I want to see and hear from you what has been the results of the Saudi Made initiative and how is it helping kind of the SMEs exporting and so forth from Saudi. And the second thing, being a youth in Saudi, the talent aspect. With all the FDIs coming into Saudi and with all the kind of the headquarters of companies regionally coming into Saudi, how will that help the talent develop further, being able to Saudiize the more technical jobs further, just for us as the youth to get even more excited? Thank you very much.
We need a whole session on youth, I think. But we'll do the best we can quickly. Who would like to respond?
Maybe on Saudi Made, one quick response. We've witnessed an increase in non-oil exports over the past, rebounding from COVID, but that trajectory is continuing. And our ambitions is non-oil exports to grow. We want to tie or link capital locally and internationally to the products and services that can compete regionally and globally. So that's a quick...
I would just say, link the two questions, is that Made in Saudi is about exports. It's not a domestic protection program. And more importantly, from my perspective, and going back to the national investment strategy, we want everything made in Saudi to be built on Saudi supply chains, value chains, extending into the SMEs, empowering the youth to provide the maximum multiplier, including jobs and value add and innovation that was being discussed, linking with the academic and the technology and RDI strategy that His Excellency Abdullah Swaha is leading. So it's beyond the final product that you see on a shelf or in a container. It is the entire ecosystem that will create it.
I think if I may, there are two aspects of this that we are being careful with. I mean, one is obviously the know-how that comes from international investors that are His Excellency Khalid Faleh is promoting. And the other one is the investment that are made by the Public Investment Fund internationally. One of the key KPIs on PIF is to make sure that when you invest, you will need also to bring these investments home with the know-how that they bring and the opportunities for the youth.
So we're out of time, but I can't help but ask this question out of curiosity. We've talked about so many things, and there's so much progress being made. If you could each pick one thing, 30 seconds each, one thing that you're most proud of that you think contributes to the future of the world, where you can lead, what would that be? Do you want to start? We'll just go down the road as fast as
I think the kingdom has been tested more than anybody else. The stress test has been severe with the multiple shocks that we experience in the economy, in the oil market, labor challenges, obviously the health crisis. I think we came out of it stronger than ever. The resilience of the kingdom that has been proven, and the increased trust as we prioritize people and prioritize business enterprises. The increased trust in the government, I think, is something that we can model to the rest of the world.
I think there is a lot to talk about, but you asked for one thing, and I would say, throughout in the last 2 years and in the core of the pandemic, the fact that we have actually invested heavily in infrastructure, particularly digital infrastructure, and the financial sector enabled the kingdom, the people of the kingdom, and the businesses to survive during a very difficult time, and we exceeded the targets that we wanted. We had a cashless society or less cash society targets that we have actually exceeded, and because of that, we managed throughout COVID.
Thank you, Mohammed. Go ahead, Princess.
I believe it's the collaboration between government and private sector. During our G20 presidency, we were the first country to ever bring private sector to the official G20 working ministerial group meeting of tourism. So that collaboration that was built there and then that opened the dialogue between both private and public sector is something that we want to continue to build on. It's something that we're most proud of.
Thank you, Mo.
You had one energetic leader instill not only hope, but inspire women, youth, and entrepreneurs on making sure that no one is left behind by delivering 25 million virtual consultations. 25 million kids were not left behind within the region, and created a movement to plant 50 billion trees to safeguard the planet.
Faisal.
I would add, I think, with the start of the vision, the culture of collaboration, debate, evidence-based policymaking, engagement, and this was instilled by our leadership. This served us well during COVID, internally, but also externally with the G20, and it really underpins the foundation of our new way of engaging internationally, which the forum is an example of, and our presence here is an example of.
Well, I think that you all have helped us better understand the kingdom and inspired us to look for maybe some investments and join the movement forward. So thank you very much, all of you, for your